Let's attempt to punch another hole in the wall um, on Dasein, trying to think Dasein. Um, on this ish-do or I-you relationship of Martin Bauber or Buber, um, I believe that Heidegger regarded the whole thing as artificial, as a problem which remains, like Nietzsche, according to Heidegger, naive of Dasein properly. So why? If we look at Aristotle, what does Aristotle say about the issue of a friend? Aristotle says a friend is one for whom merely um, coming into their presence is pleasant, is something, if, or stated more directly, if, no matter what we may think positively, admire somebody, um, think positively about them in n number of ways, if merely being in their presence is not pleasant to us, then that's not a friend. Um, the each do when compared to um, the I-you when compared to the I-it, still forces us to remain as a human being understood in contradistinction to a thing, and therefore just taken formally, if you like, as a formula, it fails to we fail to understand ourselves as Dasein, because Dasein is neither to use even more artificial language, an ego. I mean, ego means I in Latin, right? So it's an ego, but if you think of what's happened to that in psychoanalysis, and so Leo Strauss gives the example that it's quite artificial if one were to say, this is my alter ego. One does say that in levity, as it were, but it can only be said in levity because it doesn't really make sense. You say, this is my friend. You don't say, this is my alter ego. It has something strange about it. The Aristotelian expression is more natural. The friend rather than the alter ego, rather than the you as the do. I don't know why that's we're compelled to say I thou. Thou is very artificial in the ordinary language in English, probably because it was translated in the 20s or so, and people and the classicists who translated it preferred that. I don't know if there's more justification than that, because in the German title it's just ich du, which is sounds much more natural. Which should be just I you, so far as I can see. But even so, then we're thinking of ourselves as human beings rather than as Dasein. Now, Heidegger may say Dasein is the human being, but this is always a question of correctness rather than thinking it as Heidegger thought it. And so another meditation on Dasein, let's see, if, for instance, oh yeah, this whole thing about the Da. So I was thinking of this in connection with Kant. So Kant uses the phrase Darstellung for representation. So this is supposedly forbidden representational thinking. If you take that in this simple, if you take away, let's say, Kant's, I'll call it speculative metaphysics, what does representation mean from the point of view of ordinary experience? It just means the same thing as what Catholic tradition calls apprehending something, going back to the Aristotelian synthesis. It just means something's here, a building is here, and that's the building being here, us being here. That's the building is a representation in this sense. But then you add the speculative metaphysics to it by saying, which brings us into German idealism, by saying that the mind is actively producing that thing. The sense, the part of the mind that, or the senses, I suppose. I suppose Kant makes a distinction between the senses and the how does that called, the immediate intuition of the object is a creative act of the mind. And then there's also the intellectual content. What is a house in universal terms, such that beside from this house that will go away when my mind ceases to want to display it, wants to represent it the way it's representing it. There's also a universal intellectual content. But putting that all aside, I was thinking if we drop the R and just say Darstellung, this is exactly analogous to, and it's the same word, it's just, it's different form, but it's analogous to Dasein, right? Da means there in German. So think of and so Dasein, there being, which means a representation, and ourselves as the cognizer of being is there. Stellung means placing or positioning. So what's the difference between Dasein and Darstellung? The things are, Kant assumes that space, which he understands as this a priori mental form, that we have to think in terms of forces things to be placed, as it were, in this spatial context. Dasein is therefore a more free form, if you think of it that way. Quite a few, also Georg Simmel, not just Heidegger, but quite a few. Apparently, it was widely held that space is not, after Kant, the view became widely held that space is not properly given. So the German language has a few irregularities when thought from the point of view of the English languages. This phrase "es gibt," it gives, can't really be translated properly in English, because in English it's not natural to say it gives a house, or it gives a tree, or it gives a bird song. We say there is a house. So we actually say what would be equivalent to Dasein. There is a house. It's also, it reminds of that, sometimes they've encountered German speakers that use the phrase, I made, or have you made this experience? That's a little bit unnatural, because they have the phrase, because they think in terms of making experience. That's a little bit unnatural in English, right? Have you made? You can say have you made that experience, but it sounds a little bit strange. We usually say, did you have an experience? And likewise, it seems like there's about the same difference there with the it gives. It gives doesn't quite sound right. Let's just keep our mind on that. There's a little bit of linguistic difficulties there, but the reflection I was thinking about on Dasein, to try to just formally, what we're trying to do is see the ground that's neither the human being in the sense of the I and you, or the it. Remembering Freud had this, how so far we can stick with things Freud taught is hard, because he's close to us and he may be wrong, but we may be seduced to think that he's right just because we're sort of close to the Freudian moment, as it were. Our time is influenced by Freud quite a bit. But Freud had this example of the Fort da, this game that one can play with a small child. The fort meaning gone, so da meaning there. So it's there, it's gone, it's there, it's gone. This game that Freud played with, I think, one of his nephews or so, which, according to Freud, made the child become less anxious about his mother being gone, because he knew that she would come back. So it's like fort gone. This game you can play with this small child. It's something's gone, but now it's back again, or you can cover your face or so. Fort da, there. Formally, what we would be doing in thinking Dasein, just as a formula, we're trying to show that the da, the there, the it, the s, it, everything, standing alongside as we usually think it, standing alongside the human being, or the ourselves, or the I, or the ego more artificially, is there's still this separation. And then in Buber, we're like, oh, it's so great that we're now both on the same plane of the human being, instead of I understanding you as like a tree, an object alongside the tree. But no, with Dasein, we're trying to see the ground that's the same there. That's what being means formally, where these both things have to ultimately stand on the ground of being, both the it and the one who is always amidst the it, the one who is in relation through being aware of the it. The reflection I was thinking of is, when we close our eyes, you could say fort, like you close your eyes, fort, gone, the whole world is gone, right? It's no longer present. But then there's still a darkness, right? And let's say I really cover my eyes, then the darkness is even more dark, because even when we have our eyes closed, some light is kind of coming in, right? But even that, if we get it to complete darkness, complete sense deprivation, that deprivation is still present in a certain way. So you can see the full scope of what the Da refers to there. And also you can see that it's us who's saying it's still there. The darkness is still present in some way. The Da, the it, is still present. The thing that, even though usually we think of it as standing alongside something else, like a tree above the ground or whatnot, or in some relation, just as we could think another person as in relation to objects rather than as themselves. I think that makes it more clear the most extreme point of thinking the nothing, for instance. The nothing would be even more extreme than that, because even the Da as the total darkness, as a sense deprivation, must again be thought as a Da, as an it, in contradistinction to the awareness. Now we're trying to think of the being as both this, our awareness of that, and the Da in the full sense. This we can carry over the reflection back to the I-you versus the I-it. We must see that Dasein is trying to overcome our bound sense of the this total difference between the Da and the I, or the awareness.